Chancellor Rachel Reeves has announced that she would alter the remit of the almost £28 billion National Wealth Fund. So part of it could be earmarked for UK and Ukraine defence. Now, yesterday, the Chancellor signed a bilateral loan agreement with Ukrainian Finance Minister Sergei Marchenko. And in an unprecedented move, frozen Russian assets will be unlocked to fund UK defence. Here's a clip from yesterday's press conference.
Minister Marchenko, thank you very much for joining us today. We're going to sign the UK-Ukrainian Extraordinary Revenue Acceleration Loan Agreement worth £2.26 billion as part of our unwavering and ongoing support for the Ukrainian people as part of the G7 loan agreements. And as you know, that those loans will be paid back, and rightly so, with the profits of the immobilised sovereign Russian assets.
Now, the first tranche of funding is expected to reach Kyiv later this week. So Bill Browder, head of the Global Magnitsky Justice Campaign and author of Red Notice and Freezing, joins us now. So Bill, welcome to the show.
Great to be here.
So Bill, your reaction to the use of those frozen Russian assets?
Well, I've got a good reaction to taking Vladimir Putin's money and giving it to Ukraine. That seems like true justice and what needs to be done. But I should point out that this is only sort of a half step. So at the beginning of the war, the West froze $300 billion of Putin's money, of Russia's assets. And what Rachel Reeves is talking about today is taking the interest on that money and then giving it in the form of loans to Ukraine, waiting for that money to be paid back at the end of the war. In my opinion, what should be done right now is that all of that money, not just the interest, but all of it, should be confiscated from Vladimir Putin, from Russia. And that's the money that should be used to help Ukraine continue to defend themselves. And it's particularly relevant at this very moment in time when Donald Trump, the President of the United States, has basically said he's washing his hands of Ukraine. The United States of America provides about 40% of military aid to Ukraine. Europe does 60%. Without that 40%, we're going to need the $300 billion of Putin's money so that Ukraine can keep going.
So, Bill, who's in charge of that money? I'm assuming it's not all in one place. So who has the authority to use the money?
Well, most of the money is in Europe, in the EU. It's being held in a place called Euroclear in Belgium. And so the big decision, not our decision, but the big decision would be the EU's decision. So I think we should take the decision to confiscate the entire amount of money that's held in the UK. And as she mentioned, it's $28 billion. And I believe that the EU should take the decision to confiscate somewhere around $210 billion. And that would keep the Ukrainians going for as long as they need to be kept going at a moment in time when Putin is actually starting to flail. He's weak. He's got all sorts of economic problems. He's losing soldiers in numbers that are unimaginable. Interest rates are in the mid 20% range right now in Russia. He's got a lot of problems. And so, as all these discussions of peace deals and Donald Trump and meetings in Washington, we can't forget that there's a war going on right now, and it continues to go on, and it will continue to go on, because I don't believe that Vladimir Putin has any chance or any desire to stop this war, because if he did, he would have already stopped it. And so I think that what we need to do right now is really sit up straight and take some political leadership, confiscate that money, give it to Ukraine, and allow them to negotiate on terms that are acceptable to them, as opposed to terms being imposed on them by Donald Trump, who seems to be more sympathetic to Vladimir Putin than anybody else in the world right now.
How do you think Friday's events in the Oval Office would have reverberated in the Kremlin? I can read you out. Dmitry Medvedev, of course, former Russian president, tweeted out straight after that meeting. He said, "The insolent pig finally got a proper slapdown in the Oval Office, and real Donald Trump is right. The Kyiv regime is gambling with World War III."
Well, it tells you if Dmitry Medvedev is agreeing with Donald Trump, then we've got a big problem. And Donald Trump, his position on Ukraine is basically at this point, the same position as Russia. And if you noticed in the United Nations last week, when there was a vote on the third anniversary of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, a vote on a resolution condemning Russia as the aggressor, the United States voted against that resolution alongside Iran, North Korea, and a bunch of, even China abstained. They didn't vote against it. And so, I mean, we're in this unimaginable Orwellian world where black is white and white is black, and everything that we thought to be true isn't true anymore. And what's going on is really, I don't think we can even begin to calculate the terrible things that are to come if the United States has changed sides and sided with the tyrants over the democracies.
Do you think they've changed sides? I mean, do you think that we cannot rely on the US anymore as a friend and an ally because they've aligned themselves with Russia?
Well, I mean, basically, we shouldn't be, dancing around the head of a pin. We should just look at what happened. Look at that meeting on Friday at the White House. Look at has Donald Trump chastised Vladimir Putin? Has Donald Trump voted with Putin? He didn't chastise Putin.
No, he told us that he and President Putin went through a very tough time together when they were both being investigated for the Russian links, as he put them.
Yeah, and as if the Ukrainians aren't going through a tough time being bombed every night with Russian missiles, with the children being kidnapped, the women being raped, the men being executed. They're executing prisoners of war. I mean, it's really hard to see anything other than the United States has switched sides. And the only good I can say is that Donald Trump is such an erratic character that he could switch sides again for all we know. But at the moment he hasn't, and we shouldn't be pretending otherwise. We can hear everything he says, we can watch everything he's done, and what he's done is sided with Vladimir Putin over the aggressor, over the victim, Ukraine, and there's no other way to interpret what's going on.
I just want to play you a clip from earlier today. I spoke to Sir Vince Cable, the former Liberal Democrat leader, about our intelligence sharing with the US. This is what he had to say.
We're in the Five Eyes agreement with Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and the United States, which is an exchange of intelligence, a very valuable asset for the UK. But as of now, any intelligence gathered by the British, the Canadians, Australians, we have no guarantee this isn't going to go straight back to the Kremlin, because that's where Trump's priorities currently lie. The security relationship is becoming an illusion.
What do you make of what Sir Vince had to say there?
Well, I mean, I think that there's some truth in what he had to say there. I mean, it's if the United States is siding with Putin, and we're gathering information about things that we know about Putin, or we have agents or informers in Russia, I think we have to be very careful not to put our intelligence, our sources at risk. Now, again, it could all be clarified if Trump decides to switch sides again, but it's all very worrying, and I can't imagine what it must feel like if you're an agent who is supplying Britain, or even worse, if you're supplying America with information. If you're somebody in Russia who has supplied information to the United States government in the past, can you imagine how scared you are right now that you're going to be exposed and probably killed if that information comes back to Russia? And it's mind-boggling.
Would you be surprised, Sir Bill, if in a few months' time, and maybe in a year's time, we see a closer cooperation between the Trump administration and the Kremlin? And I ask this because very much in the talks that happened in the Middle East between Marco Rubio and Sergei Lavrov, there was this idea that there should be closer cooperation, that there are opportunities for Russia and the US to do business together. Will you be surprised if that actually happens?
Well, I think that's the intention. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if I'd be surprised if it didn't happen. But the one thing that everybody should understand is that there are a lot of people in the United States, I would say most of the people in the United States, that are not sympathetic to Putin. I think that 94% of people think he's a bad guy and 6% thinks he's a good guy. And so this position that President Trump is taking is against the interests of Americans. And I know that the same thing is true among people in the Republican Party, in the Senate, and in the U.S. House of Representatives. Now, how much these people will speak up and whether their voices will be heard, whether the American public opinion is relevant, I don't know. But that's the only countermeasure that could prevent all this thawing of relations. And let's just take one big step back. Why in the world would the United States normalize relations with Russia when Russia invaded Ukraine? I mean, it makes no sense that they should be punished, not rewarded. And that's what I find so difficult about this situation is that it's just goes against all morality, natural justice, national interest, security interest. Every possible reason not to do it is there, yet it's carrying on as we speak.
So, Bill, as ever, thank you so much for giving us all this time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.